Okay, so Matt Taibbi, since the Twitter files, has really been on the speech beat. This, as you would expect, is not getting any mainstream press coverage, but it's pretty significant and it's pretty terrifying. So, Russia's supposed to be interfering in our elections, right? But no, it's England that's interfering in our elections, believe it or not. The British are coming to meddle in our elections in an explosive leak with ramifications for the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Internal documents from the Center for Countering Digital Hate, whose founder is British political operative Morgan McSweeney, now advising the Kamala Harris campaign, show the group plans in writing to kill Musk's Twitter while strengthening ties with the Biden Harris administration and Democrats like Senator Amy Klobuchar, who has introduced multiple bills to regulate online misinformation. Klobuchar's office declined repeated requests for comment. Um, so now here's part of the leaked materials here. And you could see this is their agenda for a meeting on May 31st. And top of the agenda is kill Musk's Twitter. And some of the rest of it is pretty scary too. Trigger EU and UK regulatory action and progress towards change in USA and support for STAR. Now, STAR is basically a US version of what you've seen in Australia and New Zealand and the EU, where they're passing laws that will hold platforms accountable for what they deem misinformation or hate speech and so on. So this is what their agenda was. This is basically if an agenda from Dr. Evil leaked. This is what you might see. The Center for Countering Digital Hate is the anti-discrimination activist ally of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour Party and a messaging vehicle for Labour's neoliberal think tank Labour Together. Both the CCDH and Labour Together were founded by Morgan McSweeney, a Svengali credited with piloting Starmer's rise to Downing Street, much as Karl Rove is credited with guiding George W. Bush to the White House. Now, we have a lot of our British friends watch on Thursday morning, so you probably know who this guy is. I never heard of him until I read this article, but apparently he's a pretty powerful figure in the UK, and he's becoming a very powerful figure here, according to Taibbi's reporting. The CCDH documents carry particular importance because McSweeney's Labour Together operatives have been teaching election strategy to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, leading Politico to call Labour and the Democrats sister parties. CCDH's focus on kill Musk's Twitter also adds to legal questions about the nonprofit's tax-exempt status as a 501c3 organization. According to the IRS, CCDH could lose its special tax status if, quote, a substantial part of its activities is attempting to influence legislation. Yet CCDH's third item on its annual priority list is, quote, trigger EU and UK regulatory action. And the group previously employed the firm Lot 16 to lobby congressional offices on misinformation in Washington. The stateside dispatch of labor personnel has been depicted in British media as a self-interested gambit to keep America's war machinery closely aligned with Israel and Ukraine, and billions of American defense dollars flowing in both directions. However, these are only the visible parts of the British invasion. McSweeney's Labour Together has been operating in the U.S. for several years through CCDH. The Starmer Labour Together formula for regaining power in the UK relied heavily on CCDH's aggressive efforts to deplatform rivals on the left and right by lobbing accusations of bigotry, misinformation, and other misdeeds. Sound familiar? As reported in Tablet and Racket, one of CCDH's successes involved silencing Starmer's critics on the left by leading a boycott of advertisers for news sites like the left-leaning Canary on the grounds that its pro-Palestinian takes were anti-Semitic. McSweeney has been praised for convincing Starmer that he needed to sacrifice party unity to demoralize the far left faction, as Politico put it. In the U.S., a now defunct CCDH offshoot called Stop Funding Fake News led multiple successful boycotts of media figures across the spectrum, from Zero Hedge during the BLM riots to The Federalist. The formula often involved collaborating with a mainstream media outlet to level an accusation of bigotry, followed by a pressure campaign against advertisers to shut off revenue to the target. It's crucial to understand that CCDH, Labor Together, and Keir Starmer's Labour Party exist as a single package, with McSweeney at the helm. No political operative in the Western Hemisphere is more in demand than Starmer's Rasputin, regularly hailed as a genius. Much like Rove, however, the McSweeney reputation is built more on mudslinging and character assassination than insight into voter needs. Canary-style efforts and boycotts have already begun in the U.S. McSweeney's Labor Together colleague, Imran Ahmed, opened a CCDH office in D.C. 3 years ago and began working with American journalists to suppress dissent and enforce narratives friendly to Democrats and the Biden-Harris administration. All right, so this is extremely dangerous. And really, if you want to understand, because we talked to Taibbi about Trump at Rescue the Republic, and his take was basically, hey, we need to support Trump to protect free speech. Now, we've pointed out on many occasions areas where Trump and Elon as well are friendly to free speech quite selectively. Trump has said that people who burn the American flag should go to jail. He's threatened worse crackdowns on student protesters. These are not the Trump deranged claims. There's legitimate stuff he straight out said out of his own mouth. And of course, Elon, who did he pull down? Ken Klippenstein during the Democratic convention.
No, that was after. He pulled down the uncommitted handle at the convention.
Right.
He took Ken Klippenstein off for doxing J.D. Vance, but seemingly at the request of the Trump campaign.
Right. So
that was the charge that he doxed him. I didn't follow that story as closely as I should have. I admit that was my
so there
failing.
Is that, and if there's anyone who should understand how capricious Elon Musk's belief in free speech should be, it's Matt Taibbi, who Elon has shadow banned.
He said outright he's not a champion of free speech. He said that to us when we interviewed him. Yeah.
Right. Straight up.
Yeah.
So I understand in a lesser of two evils way with speech, especially if you look at what Taibbi's laying out here, and this is territory Schellenberger will very often get into as well. There is this kind of Davos WEF liberal class conspiracy, frankly, to suppress speech online. There is,
right.
And this is what he's laying out here. And this is a part of it. And he said, when I spoke to him at Rescue the Republic, he couldn't imagine what the country would be like if Kamala Harris won. And this is what he's talking about. And he's not wrong. If you look at the implications of some of this, it is pretty terrifying.
Sure.
What's going to happen to platforms like Rumble if they manage to pass something like that? Mm-hmm. Now, of course, we do have that pesky First Amendment, which is the only reason nothing like this has been passed here already.
Right.
Whereas all around us, other Five Eyes countries are adopting these kinds of policies. So based on this article, the Trump campaign is already threatening to investigate them. They've already written an article. This was the follow-up. The The Trump campaign sent a letter to the Federal Election Commission accusing the Labor Party and Kamala Harris, respectively, of making and accepting illegal foreign national contributions. The campaign cited a since-deleted LinkedIn post in which Labor head of operations Sophia Patel boasted of sending nearly 100 Labor Party staff to North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Virginia to help the Harris campaign. I thought it was the Russians. Right. I thought the Russians are interfering in our campaigns. Patel noted she had, quote, 10 spots available for the battleground state of North Carolina, and we will sort your housing. Such assistance is reportedly legal if volunteers are not compensated. So here is the tweet. I have nearly 100 Labor Party staff, current and former, going to the U.S. in the next few weeks, heading to North Carolina. Now, this is Labor Party staff coming to the United States to support a candidate. How is that not a foreign power interfering in our elections? What if Russia sent 100 operatives from Putin's political party to come help Donald Trump?
Oh, forget it. Everybody at those rallies would be in jail, much less the Russians.
Much less the Russians, exactly. Yeah. I have 10 spots available for anyone available to head to the battleground state of North Carolina. We will sort your housing. And she gives an email. Okay, so this is some of the leaked material here. Now, this is really scary, and you should really pay attention to this. The conference is entitled The State of Star. When we did the original conference, there was no legislation in place. We now have EU, UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. State of Star and explainers will be vital primers, possibly a time series analysis. Okay, so this is their reporting. This is a reference to CCDH's STAR framework, CCDH's broad plan for speech reform, which includes a mandatory framework in which duties of care to remove harmful content are enshrined and forced on private platforms by governments. As notes from the January meeting explain, when CCDH first got up and running, there was no legislation in place to suggest broad censorship by proxy format. As of January 2024, however, a host of Western social democracies have passed new laws echoing its main themes, to include the EU's Digital Services Act, Australia's Online Safety Act, and the eponymous Online Safety Law in Britain. Both New Zealand and Canada have also proposed new laws. Hence Ahmed's ominous January comment, we now have EU, UK, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. And that is certainly ominous, and it gives you a lot of insight into how these people are thinking. They are trying to gradually pass legislation that will ban speech that they don't like throughout the Western world. And when you look at this, you can see where Taibbi is coming from and feeling that Trump is the lesser evil regarding speech, that the problems that you might have there are not quite as developed as this, where they've got a plan to end free speech online ready to go that they've already executed successfully in several countries, with the U.S. being the holdout.
Please clap.